Alright, we are live. I have some redness over here. Okay. Anyways, we are live, and we're live from our favorite coffee shop. Let's go. Um, beauty. Beauty. It's interesting. If you just point your life towards beauty, if you just point your life towards beauty, and every decision, whether in personal life, whether in work, if you make that decision through beauty, I think it I think maybe things will be much easier. Things will be much easier because people need to know, you need to know, and people need to know that, okay, what is your default operating system? What is your default operating system? And for me, let's say, it's beauty. You're pulled by beauty. If you're working, if you want to create an office, that office has to be beautiful. It has to have a beautiful view. Then you have to be working on something beautiful, you have to be creating something beautiful, and you have to be in this beautiful state of mind. So everything is, it's not optimizing, it's you are being pulled towards beauty. You're being pulled towards beauty. I'm actually really curious, how does Grok respond to beauty? Who are some philosophers who have talked immensely about beauty? Let's see. Let's see. And just like we know, Codex is going through some crazy updates. Every single day there's an update, and we don't know why. Maybe it's because they are just releasing things, testing it, and then thank you. Maybe they're just releasing things, they are quickly testing, and then they are back to iteration. But it's really cool. It's really cool that software has got into the space of daily updates. Software has got into the space of daily updates. That is beautiful. We don't even see that happening with our mobile apps, right? We don't see that happening with our mobile apps. Let me quickly check. So if I go App Store and mise à jour des apps, okay, everything has been updated. It's good that we have auto updates, but basically we constantly have updates. That is crazy. Software has gotten to this place of constant update, constant iteration, really fast. We don't know. So what is the reason? Like, there also has to be a really strong feedback cycle. You work, you put your work out there, you get some feedback to improve, to know what is the right direction. Then you again do that. You again go through that cycle. So you need to be in that cycle. You need to be in that beautiful feedback cycle where you have people out there, you are putting your work out there, and you are understanding that, is it hitting, is it not hitting? I had this idea, so let's tweet that. Become an artist, create your own values. This is also something interesting because now that world is changing so fast, we were constantly talking about it. World is changing so fast. So what do we do? How do we use AI? Stuff like that. How do we make money? When the world is changing so fast, you have to become an artist. What you're now doing is you are creating art. You're creating beauty. You are using all the tools and capital and labor, whatever you have access to create something of value. And that creating something of value is now not something anyone can tell you to do. You have to create something totally innovative, and something really interesting happened yesterday. This is what I wanted to tell before, and I kind of forgot. But yesterday we ended the stream on OBS. I thought that, okay, maybe we create an OBS competitor called Obvious, and then as I'm walking back, I'm like, okay, you can actually easily fork the existing OBS to make better UI. So that can work. And then I'm just walking through I'm walking through NS Cafe, and I see there are these couple of guys who were talking on OBS. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? This is exactly what I was working on right now. And that's when we start talking, and they are actually hosting a hackathon where they are planning to live stream the entire hackathon and live stream a bunch of interviews over there. So that is going to be interesting. And maybe we'll help. It's our friend Stefan, and it'll be cool to help them bring their vision to life. Alright, let's see. By the way, I think this is a good setup now. Let's put the glasses on. Yeah, this is a good setup now. It's been a long journey just to figure out that, yeah, how should this look like? Alright. Some key philosophers who have discussed beauty extensively include Plato, Aristotle, Immanuel Kant, Arthur Schopenhauer, Friedrich Nietzsche, and others like Edmund Burke, David Hume, and George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Aesthetics. Questions of art, perception, morality, truth, and the nature of reality. Here's a selection of major figures with notable contributions. Questions of art, perception, morality, truth. Plato. Beauty features prominently in dialogues like the Symposium and Phaedrus. He views it as an ascent from physical attractiveness, bodies, to intellectual and moral beauty, ultimately toward the eternal form of beauty itself. For 1 week. So I have a friend who was thinking about do that how the network school Instagram is not very aesthetic. So I'm like, let's go for 1 week, go and start helping as if you were already leading it. It's really important to start doing the work even before you were hired for it. Beauty features prominently dialogues like the Symposium and Phaedrus. He views it as an ascent from physical attractiveness, bodies to intellectual and moral beauty. Yeah, I think this is very interesting. It's basically once you focus on the external beauty, once you focus on the superficial beauty, it becomes really important to start going deeper and create the invisible beauty. And the invisible beauty is all about moral beauty and intellectual beauty and all the beauty that comes, the energetic beauty. We don't know, there are many terms over here, but it becomes really important to then be beautiful as a whole, because if you are just focused on the superficial beauty, you have just created a beautiful shell, and inside it's empty, inside it's ugly. But you have to create a holistic beauty. You have to focus on holistic, inside, outside, everywhere. Plato, beauty features prominently dialogues in the Symposium of Phaedrus. He views it as an ascent from physical attractiveness to intellectual and moral beauty, ultimately toward the eternal form of beauty itself. Eternal form of beauty itself, a transcendent objective ideal that participates in the good and draws the soul upward. A transcendent objective ideal. I think this is talking about meditation. I don't know. This is talking about meditation. Ultimately toward the eternal form of beauty itself, a transcendent objective ideal that participates in the good and draws the soul upward. It's not primarily about superficial appearance, but a pathway to higher truth and eros, desire. The philosophy of beauty. Women with a parasol, parasol is umbrella with during summer, and parapluie is umbrella for rain. Madame Monet and her son by Monet. She walks in beauty, like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. She walks in beauty. Most people don't attach a larger significance to beauty. At most, beauty is a quality that evokes pleasure. Something or someone is nice to look at or listen to. It carries no deeper meaning, but from a philosophical standpoint, beauty was once thought of as a value to strive for, equal in weight to truth or goodness. Truth or goodness. In fact, beauty has an entire branch of philosophy devoted to it, alongside art and taste. Aesthetics. Aesthetics. But from a philosophical standpoint, beauty was once thought of as a value to strive for, equal in weight to truth or goodness. In fact, beauty is an entire branch of philosophy devoted to it, alongside art and taste, aesthetics. To the ancient Greeks, through to the people in medieval times and the Renaissance. But from a philosophical standpoint, beauty was once thought of as a value to strive for, equal in weight to truth or goodness. In fact, beauty is an entire branch of philosophy devoted to it, alongside art and taste. Alongside art and taste. Aesthetics. To the ancient Greeks, through to the people in medieval times and the Renaissance, beauty carried a moral importance. To pursue beauty was to be virtuous. To pursue beauty was to be virtuous. Stream to tune. That's very interesting. I think everybody needs an activity to tune the antenna to listen, tune the antenna to listen to the source, tune the antenna to listen to the source. Today is one of our friend's birthday. We just wished our friend happy birthday. To pursue beauty was to be virtuous when we evaluate beauty from an aesthetic perspective. Western philosophers have taken two primary stances. When we evaluate beauty from an aesthetic perspective, Western philosophers have taken two primary stances: the objective view and the subjective view. The objective view and the subjective view. The former was propelled by philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, while the latter was debated by more modern ones like David Hume and Immanuel Kant. These two theories form the basis of all subsequent notions of beauty. It's interesting, it's beautiful that it's not about what you read, it's about all the thoughts that come to your mind as you're reading. And as thoughts come to your mind, just make shit happen. Just make shit happen. Like as things are coming to my mind, I'm DMing, I'm messaging, I'm adding things to where it needs to be. The objective view, Plato's Symposium. Plato discusses beauty. This is like reading a book. When you're reading a book, a lot of thoughts are coming to your mind. And you do two things. Either you understand, you create this inner rich world, or you are then like going and like doing things. You're going and doing, making things happen in the world. Plato discusses beauty mainly in the works Symposium and Phaedrus. It's important to know that he's not really talking about beauty in the sense of physical appearance. For example, he says in the Symposium, the beauty of the mind is more honorable than the beauty of the outward form. This is where it's so interesting. There are people in the past who think like you. There are people in the past who have been thinking like you. Wow. 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 Instead, physical appearance is just a means to an end, a way to contemplate the ultimate form of beauty. Instead, physical appearance is just a means to an end, a way to contemplate the ultimate form of beauty, which is an intangible concept and higher value like truth or goodness. And a physical object is only to the extent it reflects the form of beauty. For example, he says in the Symposium, the beauty of the mind is more honorable than the beauty of the outward form. Instead, physical appearance is just a means to an end, a way to contemplate the ultimate form of beauty, which is an intangible concept and higher value, and a physical object is only and a physical object is only beautiful to the extent it reflects the form of beauty. Instead, physical appearance is just a means to an end, a way to contemplate the ultimate form of beauty, which is an intangible concept and higher value. And a physical object is only beautiful to the extent it reflects the form of beauty. But what if man had eyes to see the true beauty, the divine beauty? I mean, pure. Automatisation. Automatisation. But what if man had eyes to see the true beauty, the divine beauty? I mean, pure and clear and unalloyed, not clogged with the pollutions or mortality and all the colors and vanities of human life. Thither looking and holding, converse with the true beauty, simple and divine, which is an intangible concept of higher value like truth and goodness. And a physical object is only beautiful to the extent it reflects. And a physical object is only beautiful to the extent it reflects the form of beauty. But what if man had eyes to see the true beauty, the divine beauty? I mean, pure and clear and unalloyed, not clogged with the pollutions or mortality and all the colors and vanities of human life. Thither looking and holding converse with the true beauty, simple and divine. The key point with Plato's view of beauty is that all beautiful things share the same universal or objective traits. The key point with Plato's beauty. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I'm right now thinking about this idea of, yeah, we all have gift. We all have this gift of connection. But yesterday I'm sitting in the cafe late night. I'm talking to this one friend, and we are talking. And as I'm sitting over there, a bunch of friends are passing by, and I'm just like waving, "What's up? What's up? What's up?" And after like 5 or 6 people, he's like, "You know, so many people," and I'm like, it's not even about knowing people. I don't really know them. I just want that energy. I just want that energy to flow. It feels like we all have this energy, but we have blocked that energy. We're not letting that energy flow. And what is that energy flow? Where I smile, you smile, and then we connect. There's a connection. What's a connection? Connection is like there's energy inside me. There's energy inside you. And when I smile, you smile. We have created a tunnel, and through that tunnel, we have created a connection. And that tunnel, and through that tunnel, the energy is flowing. And that's all it is about. That's all it is about. And the goal is to give. The goal is to give. The goal is to make these connections. That's it. The key point with Plato's view of, and I really enjoy just walking into the main cafe sometimes and just like saying hi to everybody. Saying hi to everybody. The key point with Plato's view of beauty is that all beautiful things share the same universal or objective traits. That's why things like science, laws, and institutions can be beautiful too. The key point with Plato's view of beauty is that all beautiful things share the same universal or objective traits. That's why things like science, laws, and institutions can be beautiful too. The key point of Plato's view of beauty is that all beautiful things share the same universal or objective traits. That's why things like science, laws, and institutions can be beautiful too. Soon he will of himself perceive that the beauty of one form is akin to the beauty of another. Soon he will of himself perceive. Soon he will. These are beautiful things, and it's making me think a lot, and it will be very interesting. It's also complex. It's taking some time to comprehend. Sometimes I'm also thinking that if I'm not spending time learning math, learning linear algebra and all that kind of stuff, am I losing out? But then you realize that wait, maths is all rigid. Maths is all rigid, and it kind of creates a very rigid world in your mind. Let me actually see. Let's actually look into this. I believe that maths is very rigid. Maths is very binary, 1 0 1 0, but world is not like that. Maths doesn't take into account the emotions and the random ways how people make decisions, the emotional ways how people make decisions, and how this world works. So that's the reason I feel like it's actually a waste of time to learn mathematics and spend all your entire life learning linear algebra and derivatives and integrations. Let's go. Let's go. Maths is very rigid. Oh, not maths. Maths. It's okay, cancel. I get where you're coming from, math. Does often feel rigid, abstract, and disconnected, like a binary machine in a world full of emotion, chaos, intuition, and messy human decisions. Spending years running linear algebra, derivatives, and integrals can seem like a waste if it doesn't obviously feed your soul, creativity, or real world momentum. So that makes sense. You need both. You need both actually. The answer is always in the middle. It's not one or the other. The answer is always in the middle. Once you have figured out this entire intellectual, emotional part, what are you going to do now? You're going to now do something extreme. You're now going to do some maths. So both are important. Math does feel rigid, abstract, and disconnected, like a binary machine in a world full of emotion, chaos, intuition, and messy human indecisions. Spending years going linear algebra, That's a valid frustration, especially if your path is more about live streaming, building tribes in architecture. You can understand presence and flow, entrepreneurship, navigating global patterns. Math isn't the opposite of the human world. It's one of the best tools we have for modeling and navigating its messiness. It doesn't ignore emotions or randomness. It gives us ways to quantify, predict, and even harness them. This is binary deterministic. Advanced math quickly moves into probability, statistics, chaos theory, stochastic processes, game theory, topology, explicitly built for uncertainty, emotions, and non-linear reality. Interesting. People's emotional decisions, behavioral economics, and prospect theory. Kahneman and Tversky use math to model irrational biases, loss aversion, randomness, random box, Monte Carlo simulations, Bayesian inference. These power AI, finance, and even understanding crowd behavior in live stream chats or markets. Derivatives, integrals, we're about rates of change and accumulation, perfect for modeling momentum in your life, growth curves in a startup, or attention flows in content creation. They're about rates of change and accumulation. Rates of change and accumulation, perfect for rates of change and accumulation, perfect for modeling momentum in your life, growth curve in a startup, attention flows in content creation. Math is the language that lets us turn intuition into repeatable leverage without a mere guessing in the dark. Math is the language that lets us turn intuition into repeatable leverage. Intuition into repeatable leverage. Relevance to your builder, live streaming, podcasting, AI interests, accelerator ideas in India, global mobility, meta pattern synthesis, AI and agents, everything you are exploring, Grok, open claw, automation runs on linear algebra, vectors, matrices, matrices for embeddings, calculus, optimization, backpropagation, probability, LLM, uncertainty. That's actually very interesting that I'm saying all this. I'm saying all of this stuff to an AI that pretty much runs on linear algebra, vector embeddings, calculus, and derivatives, and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to derive everything yourself, but understanding the concepts lets you direct tools better and avoid being purely a consumer. Decision making and flow. Okay. If we chase beauty, it's time for beauty. Let's go. All right. So, where are we at? AI agents, optimization, backpropagation, LLM uncertainty. You don't need to derive everything yourself, but understanding the concepts lets you direct tools better and avoid being purely a consumer. Decision making and flow, game theory models, strategic human interactions, perfect for partnerships, tribes, negotiations, stochastic calculus, or reinforcement learning captures random emotional ways people act. Even Yogananda Vedanta style presents pairs well with the math as a tool for clarity and chaos. Math helps you see underlying patterns. I think this is again very interesting. Like you need to know why you are doing something. It's very important to understand that why you are doing something. If you don't know why you're learning math, what are you trying to accomplish over here? When you don't have a strong why, it obviously doesn't make sense. But when you have a strong why, now you want it. Helps you see underlying patterns so you can act and flow rather than react. Entrepreneurship and content. Audience growth curves, retention metrics, A/B testing, virality models, non-canvas chats, energy transition, renewables. One of your interests rely heavily on optimization math. Understanding timing, engagement, probabilities, inner world, cold plunges and discipline, habit formation models, dose response curves, building soul in places like network school, network science, and graph theory describe tribes and momentum. Plenty of high impact people, founders, creators, don't spend their entire life on pure math proofs. They learn enough to wield it as a superpower and then focus on synthesis, emotion, and action. Synthesis. First principles thinking about root grinding. High leverage basics would be statistics, probability, linear algebra, basics, optimization. These compound massively for AI. Data-driven decisions and supporting meta patterns. Skip the waste. If advanced integrals don't serve your current goals, live streaming as art, accelerator, building, inner growth, deprioritize them, learn contextually why projects, not abstract classes. Bridge to human side. Read things like Thinking Fast and Slow, how chaos theory applies to creativity life, or explore how philosophers, mathematical echoes and optimization. Whoa. Eastern tradition sometimes analogize harmony to geometric beauty. Whoa. This is it. Now you gave me my why. Beautiful. Nature's will to power and its mathematical equation. Oh my god. Mathematical echoes in optimization. Okay. Math isn't about turning the world binary, it's about gaining clarity so emotions, intuitions, and randomness become navigable rather than overwhelming. It amplifies your adaptability and problem solving in flow, which aligns perfectly with how you describe winning. If it still feels like a waste right now, that's fine. Focus on what creates immediate momentum in your live streams, connections, ideas, or ideas. Selective math fluency. The most important thing is to keep going. Most important thing is to keep going. Most important thing to do is to keep going. We all are moving towards the same destination, depth. So now you have to decide what all you need to do before you die. What you want to become before you die. How you want to die. C'est very important. C'est vraiment important. C'est vraiment important. I really love this thing. I wanna die on stage. Oh no, die on stage? Something like that. I wanna go away. I wanna go on stage. Something like that. Alright, let's see. Soon he will of himself perceive that the beauty of one form is akin to the beauty of another. And then if beauty of form in general is his pursuit, how foolish would he be not to recognize that the beauty in every form is and the same. Soon he will of himself perceive that the beauty of one form is akin to the beauty of another, and then if beauty of form in general is his pursuit, how foolish would he be not to recognize that the beauty in every form is and the same. From Plato's Symposium. So what are the universal traits of beauty according to Plato? They include harmony, order, alignment with the divine. Harmony, order, alignment with the divine, whereas ugliness is associated with chaos and pain. And by contemplating physical beauty, you can contemplate its ultimate form, which is divinity. Doing so purifies the soul. The divine is beauty, wisdom, goodness, and the like. And by these, the wing of the soul is nourished and grows apace. I find it really cool. I find it really cool to kind of like just on this YouTube channel. I find it extremely beautiful that we have documented the entire evolutionary process of of me as a creator, of me as a streamer, of me as a podcaster, whatever. Um, and it's incredible to see the difference between me in 2020, in 2020, 2021, 2020, let's say 2020, and 6 years later. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The character, the confidence, the way you speak. Oh my god. Okay. I think this is really helpful to document everything so you can go back and you can be like, okay, this is how I was. So, what are the universal traits of beauty? According to Plato, they include harmony, order, alignment with the divine, whereas ugliness is associated with chaos and pain. Ugliness is associated with chaos and pain. And by contemplating physical beauty, you can contemplate its ultimate form, which is divinity. Doing so purifies the soul. The divine is beauty, wisdom, goodness, and the like, and by these the wing of the soul is nourished and grows apace. The divine is beauty, wisdom, goodness, and the like, and by these the wing of the soul is nourished and grows apace. But this is all abstract. What does the objective view actually look like in practice? What does the objective view mean in practice? Dancers on Stage by Edgar. The objective view of beauty focuses on the features of an object. It must have qualities like definite proportions and relations among parts, symmetry, harmony, and order. For example, Aristotle says in his work Metaphysics. This actually reminds me, I just came across this. I don't know how I came across this one video where there was this girl in a little village in Britain, in UK, who was found to have the perfect symmetry, and like the cameraman is panning on her face and like zooming into her face, and there's a guy who's like, oh yeah, the line between the two eyebrows or whatever, the eyebrow and the forehead must be 44% and she has almost 38%, whatever. And I'm like, you have pretty much killed her soul right now, because what makes her beautiful is not the face. What makes her beautiful is everything that's inside, everything that's invisible. Yeah, so interesting. The objective view of beauty focuses on the features of an object. It must have qualities like definite proportions and relations among parts. The objective view of beauty focuses on the features of an object. It must have qualities like definite proportions, relations among parts, symmetry, harmony, and order. For example, Aristotle says in his work Metaphysics. The main species of beauty are orderly arrangement, proportion, and definiteness. The main species of beauty. The main species of beauty. It's very interesting. You need to know. You need to kind of also know what you're fighting for. You need to know what you're fighting for. Once you find that, now you know what are we fighting for. The main species of beauty are orderly arrangement, proportion, and definiteness. Orderly arrangement, proportion, and definiteness. If you follow these qualities, you are indisputably exhibiting beauty. This idea seems flawed for several reasons. Let's take an example. If you have three different paintings that are all perfectly proportionate and equally exhibit definite proportions, symmetry, harmony, and order, which is the most beautiful? It seems unlikely they are just as appealing to every observer, which would mean that there is another quality needed to assess beauty. It seems unlikely they are just as appealing to every observer, which would mean that there is another quality needed to assess beauty. The objective theory also contends that beauty evokes pleasure. That beauty evokes pleasure. For example, the philosopher Plotinus says this is a spirit that beauty must ever induce wonderment and a delicious trouble, longing and love, and a trembling that is all delight. If you follow these qualities, you are indisputably exhibiting beauty. The objective view of beauty focuses on the feature of an object must have qualities like definite proportions and relations among parts, symmetry, harmony, and order. For example, Aristotle says in his work Metaphysics, the main species of beauty are orderly arrangement, proportion, and definiteness. If you follow these qualities, you are indisputably exhibiting beauty, but this idea seems flawed for several reasons. Let's take an example. If you have three different paintings, I think the more beautiful aspect is can you make something that is unconventionally not beautiful? Can you break the frame of what beautiful means? I think that is something very interesting. Can you break the frame of someone? Can you break the frame of what beautiful means by making something that's unconventionally beautiful into beautiful? That is interesting. That is interesting. You are indisputably exhibiting beauty, but this idea seems flawed for several reasons. Let's take an example. If you have three different paintings that are all perfectly proportionate and equally exhibit definite proportion, symmetry, harmony, and order, which is the most beautiful? It seems unlikely they are just as appealing to every observer, which would mean that there is another quality needed to assess beauty. The objective theory also contends that beauty evokes pleasure. For example, the philosopher Plotinus says, "This is the spirit that beauty must ever induce wonderment and a delicious trouble, longing and love and a trembling that is all delight." This is the spirit. This is the spirit that beauty must ever induce wonderment and a delicious trouble, longing and love, and a trembling that is all delight. It seems unrealistic that defined angles and lines set in perfect proportions can create such a profound response. And here's it's important not to assume that if an object evokes pleasure, it must be beautiful. If an object is beautiful, the individual experiences pleasure does not mean the individual experiences pleasure, an object is beautiful. Under the objective view, beauty is not determined by an individual's response to it. It's actually independent of the individual and its senses. Its response is a mere byproduct. The subjective views of the standard of taste. La Promenade by Pierre-Auguste Renoir. As a strong contrast to the objective view, the subjective view asserts that there are no universal characteristics of beauty because each person judges it differently. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, shaped by individual perception and varies widely. Beauty is no quality in things themselves. Beauty is no quality in things themselves. It exists merely in the mind which contemplates them, and each mind perceives a different beauty. One person may even perceive deformity where another is sensible of beauty, and every individual ought to acquiesce in their own sentiment without pretending to regulate those of others. Because it removes all meaning from the concept of beauty. If beauty is entirely subjective, it can't have a universal meaning. For beauty to exist as a concept, it must have features that are independent of individual observers. I could eat a bowl of ice cream and feel pleasure, but this doesn't mean I think the ice cream is beautiful. Maybe I was just hungry. Schopenhauer on aesthetics and the goal of art. Schopenhauer on the human condition and originally sin. subjectively disinterested judgment. Are we still talking about beauty? Kant essentially proposes a series of tests. For example, do I think this is beautiful because it reminds you of something personal? Do I think this is beautiful because I have a selfish interest in it? Do I think this is beautiful solely because it serves its purpose well? The judgment of taste is therefore not a judgment of cognition. So this is good. Is it personal? Is it financial? Is it personal because it's a personal emotion? Is it in your selfish interest, or is it truly beautiful that is caught, that is like getting your soul, moving your soul? The judgment of taste is therefore not a judgment of cognition and is consequently not logical but aesthetical, by which we understand that whose determining ground can be no other than subjective. The beautiful pleases immediately, it pleases apart from any interest. The beautiful pleases immediately, it pleases apart from any interest. They reflect nature, creation, reality. Physical beauty is fleeting. Sun will rise, diminishing the sunset in the night sky, but what it represents or allows us to contemplate is essential. The nature of the world and reality. A mechanism for understanding higher concepts like truth, reality, or even the divine. Beauty is superficial, or that it does nothing more than evoke pleasure. Physical beauty is fleeting, but what it represents allows us to contemplate the essential, the nature of the world and reality. Objective notion of beauty seems to hold weight here, as beauty serves as a vessel for contemplating something greater than itself. The subjective view appears to offer its own validity just because there is no universal agreement on what's beautiful, or that the only common feature is evoking pleasure, doesn't mean that beauty lacks meaning. It doesn't matter if each of us perceives beauty differently. What matters is that we recognize beauty and use it as a window for deeper contemplation. A mix of both objective and subjective features seems like the most compelling understanding of beauty. Beauty is also shaped by an individual's unique perception. I'm interested in Schopenhauer now. This is interesting. Before that, let's look a little bit over here. Aristotle, in the works like Metaphysics and Poetics, he grounds beauty more concretely in the physical world, linking it to order, proportion, symmetry, definiteness, and harmony. The chief forms of beauty are order and symmetry and definiteness. I don't know what that means. Beauty relates to wholeness, functionality, and pleasure in imitation, or catharsis in tragedy. Wholeness, functionality, and pleasure in imitation, or catharsis in tragedy. Modern and Enlightenment thinkers, David Hume, emphasized the subjective side. Beauty is no quality in things themselves, it exists merely in the mind which contemplates them. He explored standards of taste where refined judgment and sentiment play key roles, allowing for intersubjective agreement without pure objectivity. Emphasize the subjective side. Beauty is no quality in things themselves, it exists merely in the mind which contemplates them. Beauty is no quality in things themselves, it exists merely in the mind which contemplates them. Allowing for intersubjective agreement without pure objectivity. And then work. In a philosophical inquiry into the origin of our ideas of the sublime, which distinguishes beauty, associated with smoothness, delicacy, and pleasure. In physical inquiry into the origin of our ideas, the sublime and beautiful, it distinguishes beauty associated with smoothness, delicacy, and pleasure from the sublime, vastness, terror, awe. He evokes tenderness and affection. In critique of judgment, he analyzes judgments of taste as subjective, yet claiming universal validity. Disinterested, not tied to desire, utility, and involving free play of imagination, understanding beauty pleases, without concepts, and bridges the sensible and moral realms. Judgments of taste as subjective, yet claiming universal validity, disinterested, not tied to desire, utility, and involving free play of imagination, understanding beauty pleases, without concepts, and bridges the sensible and moral realms. Not tied to desire, utility, and involving free play of imagination. Arthur Schopenhauer in The World as well as representation, aesthetic contemplation of beauty, especially not offers temporary escape from the ceaseless striving of the will. Aesthetic contemplation of beauty, especially not offers temporary escape from the ceaseless striving of the will. It allows perception of Platonic ideals in a will-less objective state, providing solace. Nature's aesthetics was entitled The Birth of Tragedy out of the spirit of music, and one of his last works was called The Case of Wagner. The reflection of art, and especially of music and drama, is an abiding and central feature of Nietzsche's thought. Very clearly, one of his works addresses aesthetic questions, at least in passing. Some of these questions are removed from the philosophical tradition, which should explain the effect tragedy has on us. What is the relation of aesthetic value to other kinds of value? Is aesthetic appreciation disinterested and autonomous? What is the appropriate way to respond to Plato's notorious condemnation of imitative art? Other questions are less familiar though. Also when I'm talking to that person, what do artistic products say about the health or sickness of the culture or person who produces or values them? Can one make a work of art out of oneself and one's life? The work. The practice changes the nature of the practice changes you. Can one make work out of oneself and one's life? Still other questions which garner a good deal of attention from aestheticians today do not interest Nietzsche much or at all. Our estimations of aesthetic value are objective or merely subjective. What distinguishes works of art from objects that aren't works of art? It relies on estimating acceptable, judging the aesthetic merit of a work. On these and similar questions, Nietzsche has little to say. Early influence, Richard Wagner. Art and illusion, beauty, disappearance, aesthetics and physiology. Art and illusion, let's go. Aesthetic thought is centrally, if often obliquely, engaged with Plato's the genealogy. The greatest enemy of art Europe has yet produced. The illusory nature of much art, which accordingly appeals to a lot of us that is far from reason. This engagement is hardly surprising given that the main target of Plato's century is Greek tragedy, the very art form which centrally occupied Nietzsche in his first philosophical work, and which would to a greater or lesser extent continue to occupy him through his final writings. It is more surprising on Nietzsche's reasons for disagreeing with the public's verdict. He does not typically deny the central charge that art is false. He instead questions the value of Plato and most of the rest of us, for that matter, place on the truth. The central theme of nature's thought is evident already in the birds' valorization, valorization of Apollonian semblance and denigration of Alexandrian culture. Term of abuse for society which accords the highest value to scholarship and science instead of to art. Shortly before the birth, Nietzsche had written, "My philosophies inverted Platonism. The further something is from true being, the more beautiful the better it is. My philosophy is inverted Platonism. The further something is from true being, the more beautiful the better it is, living in semblance. Sheen is the goal. The further something is from true being, the more beautiful the better it is." Much later in his career, he continues to speak approvingly. This is true. This is interesting. So, maths is a tool, and you need to figure out with all this philosophy, with all these experiences, you have to figure out that what matters to you, and then use maths as a tool to get there. So, maths definitely comes at the end. It doesn't come at the very beginning. It's interesting that when we are young, we are taught about all these things. We are quickly taught about all these things. But I think even then, it's good that we are taught about all these things, but we have to be curious about it. We have to be able to approach these subjects from curiosity rather than it being talked at. He continues to speak approvingly about as a cult of the untrue and the good with semblance, in which the lie sanctifies itself, in which the will to illusion has the good conscience on its side. The lie sanctifies itself, in which the will to illusion has the good conscience on its side. The truth is ugly. We have art. Oh my God. We have art so that we do not perish from the truth. Nietzsche is opposed, in short, both to Plato's condemnation of artistic illusion and to theories like Schopenhauer's or Schilling's that try to make art into the source of some deep metaphysical truth. Art is false, and it is valuable, at least in part because of its falsity. Art is false, and it's valuable, at least in part because of its falsity. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm thinking about Instagram. I think about how everything that you see on Instagram that is false, but it is also beautiful, and the people like it is because it's false. It's not true. There are several basic interpretive questions to ask here. In what sense is art false according to Nietzsche? Why does he think artistic falsity is valuable? And how does this valorization cohere with his own views about the future of value truthfulness? In approaching these questions, it is useful to keep in mind a simple distinction drawn by Stoll. Art might be representationally false, say by attributing properties to the things it represents that they do not possess, or by expressing implicitly or explicitly false propositions. In contrast, art might be mimetically false because it is illusory, fake, non-genuine, merely resembles without really being what it depicts. In the first sense, false is being used roughly in the way it typically is in epistemology. In the second sense, it is being used in the way it is when we speak of a false friend or false teeth. The role of art is to supply a fantasy, that is to replace a reality that one cannot face. Wow. The role of art is to supply a dishonest fantasy, that is to replace a reality that one cannot face. Art must represent life as beautiful, as affirmable, precisely because life is not beautiful. Artistic representation falsifies its object by depicting it as other than it is. artisan representation falsifies its object by depicting it as other than it is. Assuming that nature is best interpreted in something like this manner, there are still on the role of art. This is really nice. This is really nice. It's just a fantasy that is to replace a reality that one cannot face. Very interesting. Very interesting. Schopenhauer. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Lectures of Aesthetics. Beauty is the sensuous appearance of the idea, spirit of truth. Art progresses historically toward greater self-realization of freedom and spirit. And beauty is a manifestation of the divine or ideal and material form. It is lectures on aesthetics, beauty in the sensuous appearance of the idea. Art progresses historically toward greater self-realization of freedom and of the spirit. And beauty is a manifestation of the divine or ideal material form. Nature ties into our life formation, Dionysian, ecstatic. Order, harmonious, rise and birth or tragedy. These beauty is tied to power, creatively, organic, powerful, vital, bodily, philosophy that rejects purely contemplative moralistic views. And the Dionysian, ecstatic, chaotic, versus Apollonian, or harmonious, tied to power, creativity, overcoming, powerful, vital, bodily philosophy that rejects purely contemplative or moralistic views. Plotinus, Neoplatonism, beauty as emanation from the one. Thomas Aquinas, beauty as that which pleases one seen, tied to integrity, proportion, clarity. Theodore Adorno, relation to impermanence, harmony of the divine, which lies in some of your interests. Xantharian modern draws on these traditions but applies them practically to romance, adventure, and everyday appreciations of beauty as a guiding life principle, more contemporary philosophy of living than classical metaphysics. R. Zamorata. Oh wow, this is cool. Xantharian romance, artist, writer, inspiration, speaker, gypsy, internationally recognized one of the most original and insightful voices on relationships and seduction in the world today. Celebration of the art of seduction, rebirth of romance, and a lifelong quest for beauty and adventure. He's also co-founder of the Emirati network of Emirati. Author of the acclaimed book The Alabaster Globe, described by the media as astonishingly insightful portrait of the type of men who love women who universally love them in return. Canada and Romania. I'm immensely curious, charmed, fascinated on an adventure, itinerant, having enormous fun in life, never needy, never attached to the outcome, never serious, but always sincere. I'm immensely curious, charmed and fascinated on an adventure, itinerant, having enormous fun in life, never needy, never attached to the outcome, never serious, but always sincere. I'm a lover of beauty in all its forms, in all its forms. I'm a lover of life and its immense potential. Lover of women, and if your heart is sincere, you will understand exactly what that means. I'm the seducer, seduced, and if you could see even 1/10 of the beauty I see in a woman, you too would be seduced, you too would believe, you too would live your life surrounded by beauty and grace. Beauty and grace. Beautiful. immensely curious, charmed, and fascinated on an adventure itinerant, having enormous fun in life, never committed, never attached to the outcome, never serious, but always sincere. I could tell you the truth about me, but to seduce you, I will tell you the truth about you. I could tell you the truth about me, but to seduce you, I will tell you the truth about you. Highly poetic, sharp, and engaging, it's easy to fall into the rabbit hole of the narrator's musing, spot poem, and on half-remembered dreams. The book is an ode to a deep appreciation. A rich, complete, beautifully poetic journey to the heart of relationships, and astonishingly insightful guide to paradoxes of love. This opus is best relished in small sips, allowing time for its many aha moments to weave themselves into your own tapestry of self-discovery. Rich, compelling, beautifully poetic journey to the heart of relationships, astonishingly insightful guide to the paradoxes of love. The surface is best relished in small steps, allowing time for its many aha moments to weave themselves into your own tapestry of self-discovery. Or Zamorata. This is kind of really cool. It's really cool. Keep coming back to it. Really grateful for my friend Pranav for introducing me to San Perion. It's incredible. Let's look into this question. Nietzsche's will to power and echoes and optimization. Will's math is primarily about brute domination's fundamental drive in all life toward growth, expansion, and overcoming resistance. Self-overcoming creative exertion, unexhausted creative will of life, basic force behind striving, beauty, and becoming who you are. Affirmative and ecstatic, especially in Dionysian aspects. Strikingly onto modern optimization processes, especially in AI, evolutionary algorithms, and reinforcement learning, gradient descent optimization algorithms, parameters to minimize loss and maximize reward. These iteratively adjust parameters to minimize loss or maximize reward, constantly overcoming error or suboptimal states. It's a mechanical will to power, pushing toward higher performance through relentless self-refinement. AI systems embody this, they don't serve the scale, iterate and expand capability, much like Nietzsche's strive to hold the Ubermensch, overcoming the last man of complacency. Evolutionary computation, game theory, populations or agents compete, mutate, and select for fitness, echoing Nietzsche's view of life as a field of power, relations, and struggles that birth novelty from chaos. And multi-agent systems or reinforcement learning. Agents learn to maximize power utility in uncertain environments. Learn to maximize power utility in uncertain environments, modeling emotional, random decisions via probabilistic policies. So the word is a dynamic power quantum in relations, not static things. Dynamic power quantum. I think Grok is actually maybe much better at this because it's also really good at the math side of it. So that's very interesting. Anticipates complex systems math, nonlinear dynamics. Dynamic power quanta in relations, not static things. Nonlinear dynamics where small perturbations lead to emergence, creativity, and higher orders of organization. In your builder context, it's like live streaming or building an accelerator. You impose creative will on chaos, audience attention, team dynamics, global patterns, optimizing flow and momentum through adaptation rather than rigid plans. It's like live streaming or building an accelerator. You impose creative will on chaos, audience attention, team dynamics, global patterns, optimizing flow and momentum through adaptation rather than rigid plans. emergence, creativity, higher orders of organization. Anti-mechanistic in some ways, but the analogy highlights how math formalizes the vital, striving aspect of existence. Will to power becomes a lens for viewing algorithms as lifelike forces, perfect for someone synthesizing meta patterns in AI entrepreneurship. Underlying order through geometrical proportion analogies, seeing the universe as a pattern manifestation of a deeper unity. This isn't rigid math, but living experiential harmony that aligns with your Yogananda Vedanta interest, an architect of the inner world. In Advaita Vedanta, reality is non-dual Brahman. The apparent world is Maya, illusion or multiplicity. But sacred geometry, yantra, mandala, Sri yantra, represents the unfolding of unity into form. In Advaita Vedanta, reality is non-dual Brahman. The apparent world is Maya, illusion of multiplicity. But sacred geometry, yantra, mandala, Sri yantra, represents the unfolding of unity into form. Harmony arises from alignment. Harmony arises from alignment with cosmic order, Vrita or Dharma. Vrita or Dharma. Proportions mirroring the golden ratio, fractals or symmetric patterns in temples and rituals. Beauty isn't superficial, it's the recognition of underlying oneness. Beauty isn't superficial, it's the recognition of underlying oneness, evoking Anand. Yogananda emphasized joy, presence, and flow as attunement. Joy, presence, flow as attunement to this divine harmony, much like geometric perfection reflecting the absolute. Buddhism and mandala. Mandalas are precise geometric diagrams symbolizing the universe used in meditation to map mind, cosmos, and achieve enlightened harmony. They embody interdependence. Indra's net, jewels reflecting all others in balance amid impermanent circles, squares, and symmetries as archetypes of wholeness. Taoism, Chinese traditions. Harmony as dynamic balance, often visualized geometrically. Feng Shui, Tai Chi, correlation, correlative cosmology, linking heavy earth with proportional structures. Beauty emerges from flowing, the Tao path is not forcing. Attunement with harmony, geometric perfection. Alright.